name of our keynote presenters. Oh, this is show me the money, right? It's a cliche or a saying that we've heard a lot. Tom Cruise kind of made it famous. How many of you would like to know how they can show you the money? We have Seth Schwartz here today from Capital West Advisors. Again, Seth is here to give you a keynote presentation on something that is important to all businesses, people that are in business already or just getting started. Seth's not here to sell a service or a product. He's here as an expert in the area of finance and money, and he's going to share with you some very helpful information. Please join me in welcoming to the podium Mr. Seth Schwartz with Capital West Advisors.
Hi. I'd just like to welcome all of you to the Pomona Business Fair and Expo. I will be discussing several elements with regards to running, growing, and financing your small business. Now, the first element that we'll discuss is wealth building strategies. Now, of course, in order to obtain wealth, you typically must grow your business if you are not already in the $1 million club, basically. And growth strategy and planning is a very important aspect of the growth of any business, whereby the growth should be planned on a very detailed basis, which often will coincide with a period of time whereby, as well as phases whereby you will potentially phase one, plan out the first 12 months or first 18 months or first 24 months, to be followed by a phase two, and then a phase three, sometimes a phase four. And within each phase of growth, you will, at times it can coincide with rounds of financing or a web development plan, whereas in round one, or even in a ramp-up phase, you're developing V1.0 of your website. And during that time, you focus on, let's say, the West Coast or the state of California, if the model happens to be that way. And whereas the geographic growth might occur in phase two, simultaneously a round of financing can occur, or Web V 2.0 can occur. So when you're planning the different phases of growth, very often there will be a specific marketing strategy, whether it be geographic-wise or a marketing method that you're employing, where you segment it from phase one to phase two to phase three. As the example I was giving in terms of geography, where you might originally start in California in phase one, phase two can be the West Coast, phase three can be nationwide, phase four can be international. If you are a business-to-business company, it can also involve the industries that you're going to be focusing on. For example, if you're a services company, maybe you'll be focusing on the primary target market in terms of various industries in phase one, whereas phase two, you begin to focus on what is less of a primary market and what's called the secondary market, or tier two in terms of a target. Now, strategic alliances are an important way to grow and something that should constantly be explored. You want to consider various affiliate partnerships that can more or less expand your line of products and services, which, for example, if we run a business planning company, which Capital West Advisors, I'm managing director and owner of, and in the past, actually, not currently, but we've partnered with logo design companies. We're currently partnered with an SEO company, soon to be partnered with a new web design company. In terms of, that's an affiliate partnership whereby we refer them business and they refer us business. So whatever business you're in, you do want to consider who are the related products and services that can refer business to you and you can refer business back to them. Now, in the events where it becomes more of a closer relationship whereby the two companies are actually working together collectively in a way whereby, for example, there was a company that we strategically partnered with, which was a startup business planning and capital introduction firm, which had a good management team, they had good financing, but they didn't have the operations and staff needed to support the growth. So we partnered with them. They had a very aggressive and possibly over-optimistic strategy, but for several months we were developing all the business plans on behalf of their clients. They included Capital West advisors within the engagement letter that they provided to each client as a strategic partner involved, where they're working collectively as opposed to an affiliate partnership, which is when you merely refer business out as opposed to collectively working together, two companies, which is the basis of a strategic partnership. Another example is, for example, a beverage company might already have a good product line, but they want to add a new product to the company, and it's already currently being manufactured by another company, so they can strategically partner whereby the other beverage company that's manufacturing the product that they want to add to their product line can come in on a private label basis, whereby their company is not mentioned at all in terms of marketing. However, they are doing all the manufacturing for that specific product, whereas the other company is merely marketing that product and operating the business. Now, a very important strategy for growth stage and late stage businesses tends to be acquisitions. Once you've already established a strong marketplace for your company, a natural thing to do is acquire smaller companies. Specifically, in terms of medium and large businesses, acquisitions becomes a very important facet of business, and especially with large businesses, Fortune 500 companies acquire most of their growth or obtain most of their growth by acquiring smaller companies and companies that expand the product line or the economies of scope, economies of scale in ways that are beneficial to the company's success and operations. Now, once you have acquired or while you're growing, your company will have cash on hand. It's important to invest that cash in an intelligent manner and diversified way, which includes stocks, bonds, commodity investments, government bonds, savings, and private investments potentially into other companies. Government bonds include T-bills, T-notes. T-bills are 1 year or less, T-notes are longer. Municipal bonds, state bonds. When it comes to municipal bonds and state bonds, you do not have to pay federal tax. And similarly, when it comes to state bonds and municipal bonds in several states, including California, you do not have to pay federal tax. Now, the goal of many entrepreneurs and business owners is to build a company to a place whereby the owners and the investors can exit. Now, IPO is a common way to execute this, which is basically selling a percentage of your company at a predetermined percentage in exchange for a certain number of shares. And that is the IPO price. Now, IPO price is subject to market demand and supply to that stock, whereby, that's why sometimes you'll see the stock fall 30% or, go up 60% immediately upon an IPO. If it was too conservative or too optimistic, what that company was worth. Now, when a company becomes public, at that point, all the shares are public, including the owners and investors. However, that doesn't mean the owner necessarily is going to immediately, even if the owner wants that money or value derived, doesn't mean they're going to sell it, because that must be released when an owner sells a substantial amount of stock, which typically has an adverse effect if the owner is selling out right away. Now, sale, of course, is immediately selling the entire company. Management buyout is whereby the managers, typically not the investors as well, allow themselves to be bought out, which in most cases means that they had majority ownership if they're able to make that decision without the investors. So if you're running a company and you're the CEO and you have COO and CFO and you collectively have over 50% of the company, then you can sell your equity share. Let's say the investors had, you guys collectively had 60%, the investors had 40%. You would be able, as the three executives, you'd have to be able to make the decision to sell your ownership to new management to come in and take over, otherwise known as a management buyout. Okay, now we will proceed to business financing, which is essentially my core specialty as an owner of Capital West Advisors. Business and financial planning is a necessary element, or it's a necessary thing to do to grow a business and to raise capital, also at times to form strategic partnerships. The business plan and financial plan can also be used to place interim executives, which can be a CEO, a CFO, a COO. When starting a business, you want to, if you're looking to raise capital especially, you want to have a strong enough backbone of a management team. So you must examine your own strengths as a manager and try to couple yourself up with co-executives that have the background that complements your background, whereby together you form a strong initial backbone for management. A full-time executive at a predetermined salary and sometimes equity. In the meantime, they typically will they won't be an executive until that happens, that milestone, which is normally an investment of, whatever you're looking to raise, whether it's 100,000 or $1 million. At which point, you'll have an agreement that they will come in as a CEO or CMO or COO and earn a specified salary, whether it's 100,000, 150,000, 200,000 for their first year, and typically garner equity, which can come in different stages. It can come all in the beginning, or it can be laid out where some comes in the beginning, some comes 6 months later, some comes 12 months later, at times it could be 18 months, that agreement. So in the meantime, you don't have to compensate these executives anything. Typically, the way that works, you can also have consulting. They could be on an independent contractor basis in the meantime, offer them consulting, hourlies. However, very often there is no compensation until that milestone occurs. So that's why placing an interim executive can be very important to raising capital, as a sole proprietor or sole manager of your company. So it's very important to place that any interim executives that you'll need to make your business strong enough to grow and raise capital. Management, as I was saying, is very important to raise financing. When you have that business plan, not only can you get the financing, but you can place that manager. So sometimes you'll want to place an interim executive before you do your business plan, and sometimes you'll do your business plan before you place the interim executive. Part of it can be how much capital you're looking to raise, how big the scale of the business is, how complex it is. The more you need to convince somebody, the more important it would be to first have the business plan and then place the executive. Although, in general, to raise capital or grow a business, you'll need a detailed business plan and financial plan. Typically, the financial plan should be on a 5-year basis. At times, you only need a 3-year plan. And it is best to plan it monthly in year 1 and quarterly in year 2 through 3 or 2 through 5. You want to show at least monthly detail in year 1 and quarterly detail in year 2 through 5. Now, the different forms of financing that are available include debt financing and equity financing. Debt financing is basically securing a loan that you need to pay back, although there are also convertible debentures whereby the investor typically has an option to convert the loan that is owed back to them into equity, which they do upon significant growth. So that is, that's somewhere between a loan and an equity investment. Now, the typical loans, bank SBA loans to startup companies and companies that might not be 100%, it might have a little bit of risk in terms of a payback. And that's what the SBA program is designed for. The microloan program is specifically designed to help people who can't typically get a regular SBA or bank loan, and that I believe is up to $40,000, and that's a specific form of an SBA loan, which, from what I know, the SBA backs 50% of most of the time, and that's up to $40,000. I believe it's changing all the time, but from what I believe, that micro loan is up to $40,000, and like I said, your credit, the strength of credit becomes less important for that specific loan because the SBA backs 50% versus the typical SBA loan, which is where they back 25%. Now, private loans, of course, they tend to be given by private lenders, private investors. Also, or often situations where a person wouldn't naturally be able to get that full loan from a bank or SBA-backed bank. And so those are typically at higher interest rates from private individuals or private lending groups. Again, for a slightly higher risk opportunity. Now, equity financing, another specialty of my company, deals with angel networks, venture capital firms, private investors. There are approximately 125 decently sized angel networks within the United States. The vast majority of angel networks focus on a geographic basis, also on an industry basis, whereby they focus on a few particular states, or they focus on a region of states, which can be the tri-state area of New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania. It can be the Midwest. It can be, and then when it comes to California and Texas, it's typically either California or Texas, or part of California or part of Texas.
Seth, is this what you call the Shark Tank type of financing? Everybody familiar with Shark Tank investors? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So they're gonna give you money, but they're gonna want a piece of your business too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Hence the phrase vulture capital. People sometimes use in reference to venture capital. Like I was saying, angel networks, they tend to have a geographic focus. Alternatively, venture capital firms tend to have more of a nationwide focus, at times a global focus. Somewhere between 30 and 50% of VC firms will consider global opportunities, and the majority of them mainly look at American opportunities. There are VC firms that do have a regional focus, but like I'm saying, the vast majority have a national focus. Whereas, as I mentioned previously, angel networks can focus on specific industries, but the majority of them will focus on any industry. But VC firms tend to get more specific in terms of the industries that they'll look at. Many VCs will invest in any life science, which includes biotechnology, medical devices, healthcare. Other VCs will invest in any internet, infotech, or technology company. But then there are many VCs, maybe about 30% of them, that have a wide open focus in terms of industry. Even if they have a wide open focus in terms of industry as well as geography, VC firms tend to have a specific stage that they invest in and can have a specific range that they invest, which could start, well, angel networks tend to range from 100,000 up to 2.5 million for most of them in terms of what they indicate that their investment parameters are, whereas VC firms tend to start somewhere between 500,000 and 2 million in terms of their minimum investment amount, and that can range up to 40 million. Now, the VC firms that do invest as low as 250,000, 500,000, a lot of them are looking at internet and software companies if they're investing that low. Because historically, VC firms will start around 2 million, whereas angel networks end around 2 million. And that is basically where the dichotomy exists between conglomerations of private investors and the VC firms, whereas now with internet software, a lot of times you're submitting it to both VC firms and angel networks. And in general, if you're looking for 1 million to 3 million, very often you'll be submitting it to both VC firms and angel networks. As I just mentioned, angel networks are simply a conglomeration of individual investors. Although some angel networks do have a fund that invests alongside these private individual investments, whereby sometimes the fund can match what the individuals invest or is 25% of what the individuals invest. And that would be by the managing coordinators. So there are some angel networks, I don't know how many, but maybe 25% of them that co-invest, and that's because they put together a fund, often mainly through the managing coordinators.
So these should be considered non-traditional type of financing options. It seems that there are some specific information, probably some very detailed information that business owners would have to have prepared, and probably should seek advice either from a company like yours or the SBDC or SCORE in looking for these opportunities for non-traditional. The important thing is to know that other than banks, there are some very non-traditional things. The United States is known for entrepreneurship, and here these folks are, whether they're angel networks or VC firms or private investors, are willing, they've got the wealth already, so they're willing to take a piece of your business and give you some of their hard cash. Can you go ahead and move on to government grants? I'm going to keep you on time here.
All right, so partnering with suppliers and procuring lines of credit. Now this goes over some very alternative forms of financing, although commonly used, but alternative in comparison to the typical equity or debt financing. Now, distribution partnerships. Distribution is an extremely important, distribution partnerships are extremely important when it comes to distributing products, whether it be food products, consumer products, any type of products. Having distribution partners that already have direct access into many retail channels is a very important facet of any product business. Now, these distributors typically will buy the products at a discounted amount, and that's the way it typically works, although at times you can establish partnerships whereby the distribution company takes a percentage of sales, so which can help from a financing perspective. Now, inventory financing involves basically when you have a purchase order and it might take 30 days to get paid or longer, you can get financing from banks and inventory financing places that specialize in lending money on a very short-term basis in exchange for the purchase order. So in that situation, all the proceeds, when the purchase order actually comes into fruition, that will go to the inventory financier. And in the meantime, the business will be financed to be able to keep producing inventory and making sales. Now, marketing financing involves often there are professionals that specialize in helping companies obtain marketing financing, whereby it could be a direct response company that has a great product, they have inventory, but they basically need substantial money for marketing. So what happens is these individuals that specialize in financing, they either themselves directly or have partners that have excess TV or whatever slots it could be, and in exchange, the marketing financing and the marketing channel, they take a percentage of sales. However, that's coordinated in partner. Accounts receivable financing is very similar to what I described about inventory or PO financing, but it basically just means to get financing on a check or on a credit card payment. And also similar to the PO thing, basically if there's a purchase order not related to inventory, that's considered AR financing. Debt financing, I believe that we've already discussed here, so I believe I just included that as you should consistently consider additional debt financing as you grow. All right, so moving on, the next topic for discussion is capital investment, which I've already discussed a little bit regarding financing strategy. Very often you will want to plan out your financing strategy into several rounds of financing. For example, let's say you had an invention for a new product that would require $500,000 to develop, either